Why aren't you complaining every week that 1 in 2 women is sexually assaulted in the West? Why are you just complaining that some migrants did it when they were drunk on New Year, for example? It's because the media is reporting on it. It's not because you care about the issue, it's because the media's told you to care about this issue because a foreign person did it. If you cared about the issue, you would be speaking about it regularly, that men need to develop and need to discipline themselves so as they don't abuse and assault women. Vice versa. You would also say that industries like the porn industry, which objectifies women and turns them into a sexual object, and lots of young men watch it and believe that women are supposed to behave in this way for them. You would stand against those. You would stand against the alcohol industry, which is fueling these bizarre behaviours and making people act like animals that act on their 5 senses instead of like human beings who act from a place of morality and from their heart. But you're not. You don't care about these issues. You care about the media has told you that a foreign person caused a problem. It's nonsense, guys. Guys, so kind of speaking about something which is in relation to the video I made about the immigration and the Brexit, but it's more to do with the psychology or the consciousness of some of the excuses that the people are using to be fearful of migrants. Now, as I say, I don't think you're bad people if you're afraid. I have empathy for you. The way I see it is either you've bought far too deeply into the media without buying into other sources of education. And so you believe that there's this huge, terrifying problem going on from one side of the argument. The other possibility that I see, as I said in my other video, is that you've managed to achieve so little as a being within the Western society that the only part of it you can be proud of to be a nationalist is the part you had no control over. The part before your free will began, the part you can't possibly tell anyone how you managed to be born somewhere. So these people, and not in a bad way, have empathy because society did it to you, no one else. It wasn't your fault. You've either been underserved to such a degree in society that you can only be proud of something you didn't achieve, or you've become so fearful of the stuff that the media is pumping into you that you're starting to believe it. Now, one aspect of this in particular that I see is how the media has portrayed the immigration and the migrants coming into the countries. Now, Fritzi has family who are working in the camps in Germany and who has opened a centre for persons coming in, for migrants coming in. And the story you get from inside there is a very different one. It's a story of family, it's a story of parenting, it's a story of love. But a lot of the media that's not the story you're getting. Now, I've had several comments and private messages, and I've just had another now. And I thought I'm going to speak about this. Because one of the things that these persons that I can only deem as leaning towards nationalism, or at least leaning towards buying into the fear that the media has pushed upon them, is that the migrants are causing chaos when they come into the countries. Someone just gave me an example of Cologne in Germany. And I replied to them by saying, yeah, but it unearthed something. For those of us with a little bit of intelligence to look or wisdom to see, you can see something very clearly from that Cologne incident alone. When it was addressed that these men were running around drunk and grabbing and groping German women and European women. Terrible things shouldn't be happening. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that this should happen. It shouldn't be happening. But when this was happening and Germany looked into how to prosecute them, they realised that the laws of their country said that you're okay, actually, to grope a woman in public as long as she doesn't fight back. What does that tell you? It tells you that the developed nations, as we call them developed, create citizens that are developed and have a less animal way of being, a less unconscious way of being, and a more thoughtful way of being towards others. What it tells you about those developed nations is that in history, the humans in that nation thought that it was okay to grope women, so long as they didn't fight back. It tells you that the humans of our developed nations, our ancestors, presumably our old relatives, were not as developed as we would like to think they were, because they had stupid laws. It wasn't so long ago that being homosexual was illegal in the West, in England, for example, where I'm from. Here in Tanzania, it's still illegal. The country's not as developed, so the consciousness is not as developed, so the way that people think is not as developed and not as forward-thinking. But if you pull onto the media aspect of it, you pull to what the media have said about migrants who are raping and pillaging and assaulting and causing trouble. Of course there are some persons in amongst the migrants who are causing trouble. And of course there are drunk men running around grabbing women. But on which given weekend in any city in Europe is that not happening? There are ignorant, drunken fools every weekend I go into a city in Europe, running around fighting each other, chasing women and arguing with each other, cheating on their loved ones, hurting their loved ones. Just animals. Every single weekend in every single European city, that is what's happening. That's your culture. And it is said that half of every woman, 1 in 2 women, has been sexually assaulted in the Western world. If you think it's migrants who are causing this problem, you're wrong. It's the media is reporting upon it. The media is telling you it's this problem, and you're buying into it. Because it sells papers, it gets you interested, it riles up the community. It creates fear. And fear, as I've mentioned, the military-industrial complex, the central banking cartels which fuel that, the central banking cartels which are fueling the economy, which are fueling your government, they are fueling the media. And fear is the best place to have something, because fear makes you predictable, it makes you controllable, and it makes you weak. If 1 in every 2 women has already been sexually assaulted in the West, how can you say it's a migrant problem? How can you say immigrants are to blame for this? You can't. It's not how it is, it's a human problem. And if you're going to speak up and you're going to mouth off about these problems, if you're going to complain and say that it's terrible that there were some men of a different nation inside a European country who were drunk and running around and groping women and the media was reporting upon it, then you need to complain about the others who were from that nation who were drunk, running around and groping women. We all know it happens. Drunk young men do it all the time, and older men, unfortunately. They run around grabbing women on nights out, touching their behinds and stuff in bars and clubs. And it's pathetic and it's sick. But it comes from a place of small awareness and small consciousness and small-mindedness. And if you're so concerned about these problems, why don't you stop buying into the problems and the things that are causing them? Why don't you all stop buying into alcohol? If you stop buying into alcohol, people will be a lot more rational on a weekend when they're out there drinking. They lose their inhibitions, they cause trouble. Stop buying into it, stop drinking. Stop drinking the substance that the elite have told you you're allowed to drink. The thing that they've told you, that's legal, that one's okay, for all it kills more people than most of the illegal drugs. And would be more unhealthy and kill more people than most of the illegal drugs if the illegal drugs were made legal. It makes people behave like animals. An animal is predictable. If you want to hunt an animal, you've got to understand its behaviours. It's got to be predictable. Humans that act like animals are predictable. And the elite are hunting your consciousness. They're not hunting your bodies with guns. They're hunting the way you think. This is the trophy. The way you think is the trophy. That's how they win. So if you're so concerned about migrants causing sexual assault, stop drinking alcohol, because this is when these problems are happening, when they're drunk on a weekend inside the Western culture, which is teaching the rest of the world it's okay to get hammered every weekend. It's okay to be drunk every weekend. I've just been in Europe. Every other thing is about alcohol. Everyone wants to drink with everything. Why? Can't people see they're addicted? Do they honestly not believe that collectively they are addicted to this? Because that is what's going on to those people who enter that society from a society like Tanzania, and they see all these people. Sure, there's alcohol here, but here, you're either a drunkard or you don't drink. It's as simple as that goes. This is how society views it here. You take a Tanzanian person into Europe and they're shocked and appalled, I've spoken to them, at how it is set up and how people need to drink with everything. Let's look at something else which is causing this problem in young men in society, away from migrants. Let's look at the Western men who are causing trouble with women, who are groping women, who are molesting women. 1 in 2 women is supposedly abused or suffered a sexual assault in the West. Why? Because all of the men out there who complain that it's a terrible thing are still buying into the things that fuel it, like pornography. A lot of men, most men in the West, are buying into the idea of pornography. Quit. If you're not addicted to it, if you're such a strong man, you think it's terrible that women are being assaulted, stop buying into an industry that portrays women as a sexual object for your pleasure. Stop it. If it's a concern of yours, if you're going to speak against other human beings and say, they're molesting women, they're doing this, stop buying into the societal things that cause these problems anyway. If you're going to complain about those things, then go home and switch on your pornography and go out for a drink with your friends at the weekend. You're a hypocrite. I'm sorry, but you just are. And I know these things are addictive. I've been a young man in the West. But if you want to be a real man and you want to be developed and you don't want to be hooked on Western trinkets of material and 5 cents pleasure, such as pornography and alcohol, then you need to go through some difficult times to come away from the addiction, like surrendering from all addictions. It's hard to break them. But why are men buying into this stuff, and women, buying into this stuff and then complaining about these problems in society? Why aren't you complaining every week that 1 in 2 women is sexually assaulted in the West? Why are you just complaining that some migrants did it when they were drunk on New Year, for example? It's because the media is reporting on it. It's not because you care about the issue. It's because the media's told you to care about this issue because a foreign person did it. If you cared about the issue, you would be speaking about it regularly, that men need to develop and need to discipline themselves so as they don't abuse and assault women. Vice versa. You would also say that industries like the porn industry, which objectifies women and turns them into a sexual object, and lots of young men watch it and believe that women are supposed to behave in this way for them. You would stand against those. You would stand against the alcohol industry, which is fueling these bizarre behaviours and making people act like animals that act on their 5 senses instead of like human beings who act from a place of morality and from their heart. But you're not. You don't care about these issues. You care about the media has told you that a foreign person caused a problem. It's nonsense, guys. And it's fickle and it's flaky. If you're going to stand against the issue, stand against one. But don't stand against the thing that the television or the newspaper told you to stand against. Stand against the core problem. Stand against the reality of it. Things like the porn industry, like I say, alcohol industry. Things like the terrible advertising that is all coming from where? From a profit and loss capitalist system that is headed by a central banking system, which is designed to control the masses, to allow the elite to be elite, to have ultimate power, to have such a level of resources that literally people right now as I speak are starving and dying of hunger, whilst other people are driving around in sports cars and eating expensive foods and wasting money on hobbies and games and entertainment. If you want to stand with some morality, stand with it. But don't stand with morality against things that the media want you to stand against and blame it on other human beings and become scared of these human beings because of it. People immigrating have had their countries bombed and destroyed. Either that or their countries are torn apart by extreme human beings who have came about because the West, again, has destroyed their faith in humanity and their faith in the West by bombing countries to expand empires. They bomb Iraq, they bomb Libya, and then they implement central banking systems that belong to the West. They didn't give those countries back to their people. They conquered them. And if you switch your minds on and look and study away from the media which they are giving you, you'll understand that they conquered them. When a monetary source invades a country and says it's liberating the country for its people, and then when it's finished bombing and destroying the country, it takes over the country, sells off pockets of the lands like they did to Iraq to Western investors, and then establishes a centralised banking system by the same family who owns and controls the centralised banking system of the military forces who attacked that country. They conquered them. They didn't liberate them, they didn't free them, they conquered them, they expanded their empire. And they used the ignorance of the Western populace to do it. They used the ignorance of people who backed it out of fear to go ahead with the war. And they used the ignorance of those men and women who signed up for the army thinking they were protecting their loved ones. They abused your love. And there are soldiers telling you this out there. I'm not alone in that. Soldiers tell you these things. That it's not as it seems. Immigration, it needs control. You can't just have people moving everywhere because nations need to prepare for them coming. But that's what nations need to do, is prepare and have empathy for them when they're coming, and see them not as a Muslim, not as a foreigner, not as whichever nation they're from, but to see them as a human being, a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, a child, an auntie, an uncle, a grandparent, a grandson, a granddaughter. As someone whose home has been destroyed and everything they know is gone, and now they're left in a big scary world where they're having to come to another country for help and for food and for somewhere to sleep. And thankfully there are people with good hearts who welcome them. Like I say, Fritzi's family is among them. But then there are those with terrible hearts who try to scare them away and say, go back to the atrocities. How would you feel if it was your country? How would you feel if a bunch of human animals and lunatics started killing people in your country, and a stronger nation like China started bombing the life out of your country, and you had nowhere to go, and everyone around the world started saying, no, stay inside your imaginary lines. Just die in there. Because we don't want you on our plot of land. It's stupid. It's just stupid. And the more fear you allow the media to give you, the weaker you become. So empower yourselves, people. And if you're going to stand against things, stand against them properly, like a real human would. Don't just stand against them and say, these people did this, these people did that. Look at the problem itself. Okay, some migrants rape some women. Horrible. Shouldn't happen. But men rape women all the time in the West. Let's address why. Because men are not told how to discipline their bodies and behave like a human being. They are worked up into a sexual frenzy like an animal, using everything from diet, drugs, media, pornography, movies, substances. They are worked into this animal frenzy and concept of sex, plugging into their testosterone that women can't understand because they're chemically wired differently to women, to the majority of women. And then these young men, some are boys in school, who are being subjected to this daily. And then they go out into the real world and you expect them to just understand that they're supposed to have respect for women and for their fellow man. When you've done nothing other than buy into those things yourself, sit at home watching pornography, going out for a drink on a weekend, and then complain when men don't control themselves, or boys don't control themselves. You want to put a stop to it. Don't buy into the things that are working humans into frenzies, such as the media, such as the porn industry, such as the alcohol industry, such as the stupid Western way of life where everyone thinks it's okay to go and stand in a dark building on a weekend with loud music, go into some sort of frenzy and drink alcohol. Been there, done that. It's weird. It's bizarre to me when I stand out here living in nature. It's really creepy. It's really creepy that every city's doing that on a weekend. And I used to be in there. I know the sort of stuff that goes on in clubs. And none of it's positive. Well, very little of it's positive. Some people socialise and have fun, but the majority of people are completely distracted and deluded from their true reality. Because as alcohol was introduced to the slave races in ancient Egypt, It was introduced to them on a weekend, then money was introduced to them during the week so they could buy the substance on a weekend, so they felt free, at least. It all ties into one, guys. If you want to speak out against immigrants, then you need to speak out against the problems you say they're causing. And if you're not educated on the problems that you say that migrants are causing, then no one's going to listen to you. Because all you're doing is parroting the media without any sort of substance.